Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I must say I'm a little bit cold. I'm Canadian, I'm used to it, but I'm a little chilly, so if I'm shaking up here, I hope you'll forgive me. But Mr. President, Chairman Dawood, CEO Khan, and Mr. Kamal, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, and thanking you for letting me participate in this, which I think is a wonderful moment in inaugurating this Engro Leadership Academy here in Karachi. What I wanted to say was really three things, and McKinsey we only were able to talk in three things, so I'm going to do this here as well. The first is I actually want to celebrate a bit of leadership, and particularly not to embarrass Chairman Dawood, his leadership. I then want to talk a bit about the context of the world and why leadership is even more critically important than it ever has been. And then what are some of those elements of leadership? And we heard from Salman some of the elements of the course that are here. But let me just start with Chairman Dawood, if I might. One of the things I did when I was the managing partner of McKinsey is I had a rule, which is I had to see 2 leaders a day, CEOs, government leaders, or NGO leaders every day. And so that was about 2,700 leaders I saw. And I always asked the question, and I asked this question to Chairman Dawood, if you could teach your younger self 3 things, what would they be? And what I heard consistently, it didn't matter what country, what sector, whether it was a fast-growing company or a company being restructured, the common theme was people. I would have spent more time on people. And more specifically, I would have spent more time in growing and developing leaders. I would have spent more time in quickly removing those leaders who weren't able to do what it takes to do what it takes. And I would have spent more time pulling people up in the organization to lead. It's around leadership is the driving force. The only other comment that I would hear, which was very much secondary, like 0.1% of the time in those 2,700, was culture. The importance of culture, but it was really around leadership. And in my view, Chairman Dawood is the epitome of that. And I find it interesting that the older, more successful, I'm not calling you old, Chairman Dawood, but you are a little more senior than the rest of us around here. The older, senior, more successful leaders are actually quite obsessed by leadership. I think because they've seen what it does. And what you realize with leadership is you can't turn it on overnight. It's like education. You have to build it. And those organizations that have actually focused at the leadership level in developing leadership far outperform those that do not. With Chairman Dawood, he's one that's not for small ideas, small thinking. He likes big ideas and big thinking. He's also someone who is driven and committed to making things happen. And he quotes many leaders. One that I just want to share with you from Nelson Mandela, which I found helpful. I got this actually from him. There is no passion to be found in playing small, in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. So I want to thank you, Chairman Dawood, for not settling for less and for aiming high and changing the system. And when I think about Pakistan, I've known for over 30 years in my McKinsey life of leadership in Pakistan. I tended to meet it outside of Pakistan. Many of the most successful leaders around the world in global companies are from Pakistan. This is a source of incredible leadership. And I just want to recognize that this effort is actually to grow it. I think it's one of the most fundamental competitive advantages of this country is the talent and the leadership, and we need to unleash it as we move ahead. I wanted to talk, secondly, a bit about the context. I'll do it very briefly, but it's why I think most leaders focus on wanting to spend more time on leadership. It's my belief that this time we're in now and will be in over the next 20 to 30 years will be literally one of the most disruptive times in human history. We are in the midst of at least 4 mega trends which will be here irrespective of a financial crisis or recession or health pandemic, they're fundamental. One is the re-rise of Asia. If you look back at where the center of GDP was in the world 2,000 years ago, it was actually just north of Islamabad if you were to balance the world on a piece of paper and a map. And over a 2,000-year period, it moved to Iceland, right? In a 75-year period, we're moving right back to where it was because this is where the economic power is. We're going to have 2.4 billion new middle-class consumers coming into the marketplace. Just to handle in North Asia those new middle class that are coming into the system, we will need to build 96 Unilevers just to be able to deal with that. So we have massive demand, and as Solomon said, we are in a wonderful geographic position here to participate in it. This is a major force. I would argue that most Western organizations, including McKinsey, don't get it in terms of the speed and scale with which that's happening. The second force, which I would argue is even more powerful, is technology disruption. The advent of massive computing power, our first iPhone that was ever built had more computing power than NASA had to send a man to the moon in 1969. We have more connectedness of people and things, and therefore more data, which is allowing us to disrupt literally every organization on the planet. There is no organization that is not being disrupted by technology. And it's not just the internet and artificial intelligence, it's material science, it's energy storage, and so forth. All of us are being affected by that, and it's moving quickly. The third big force that's out there is we have, on the one hand, a most aging Earth that we're ever going to see. We're going to have more people on Earth over the age of 65 than under the age of 14 in 30 years. This has huge implications on productivity. We also have a significant part of the world, including this country, where we're going to see an incredible youth demographic and population which are going to drive things forward. Those two forces at the same time are going to have a very powerful effect on how organizations work and how business works and how migration works. And the final force is we're seeing a search for a new societal deal from people all over the world. People are not happy with the system that they're in, and they're searching for a new deal. So those four forces that we're seeing that are driving the world in more fundamental ways are going to have profound impact on every organization. One of the biggest implications is clock speed. Organizations are going to have to move faster, make decisions faster, move decision-making down lower in the organization. It's also going to mean the churn rate of organizations is going to increase. In 1935, the average lifetime of an S&P 500 company was 90 years. That wasn't a very good time to be on that list, but that was the length of time, 90 years. Today it's 15 years. And so this is why leadership matters, because you can't predict what exactly is going to be happening in the next 10 years. All we can predict is it's those organizations with the most leadership that are going to be the most successful. The leadership to be able to anticipate, to be able to change, to be able to inspire, and to be able to transform what they're doing. Those are the organizations that will thrive. And when we think about leadership, and this is the final comment of what I wanted to say, it's not the classic leadership that we think about. This is something, again, that Chairman Dawood has been emphasizing. It's not what you know, it's more of who you are. We focus a lot, and it's important, on technical capability, and I have no problem with learning technical capability, and the idea that we're going to have to keep learning and relearning over time, lifelong learning on the technical side. But what's even more important is the softer side, the right-hand side of the brain, which is, again, on leadership, influencing people without power, being able to motivate people to do things that they otherwise would not want to do, to be resilient, to pick yourself back up when you have the inevitable setbacks, to be vulnerable, to be able to understand your weaknesses and when you move through it. This is the leading oneself, which Salman talked about. So the qualities of leadership are actually around character, not just what you know. And I think this is a very important part of the program that is embedded in the Engro Leadership Program, and I think will make us all better leaders. So again, I just want to say what a great privilege it is to be here for this inauguration. I'm looking forward to turbocharging the number of leaders that we have in the business community, in the public sector, and in the social sector, not only for Pakistan, but for the world. Thank you very much.